workforce?
People ask us, why did we start exporting? And the reality is, as a small business, I don't think we ever thought of ourselves as starting to export. But what we did want was to find new business, and it was the depths of the recession. Couldn't predict this market here, and we started thinking, where did we have some kind of an affinity? I used to live in Saudi Arabia when I was younger. I've always liked and respected the culture of the Middle East. And we put on LinkedIn, can anyone talk us through the economy in Dubai/Oman? Because they'd had their own difficulties recently. And somebody responded very quickly and introduced me to a third party who gave me 3 hours of time free to talk me through the economy there, and said at the end of it, I think you'll do very well. You understand the local culture, and I think you should go for it. So we did. We used LinkedIn again, of course, to research the market and see what contacts we had based in Dubai. So I got on a plane. This was all done within weeks, literally, of thinking of the idea and thinking we had to do something different. And I landed in Dubai with a whole list of some 20 chief executive meetings, and the very first one turned into new business. It was fantastic. It was the best case study for social media ever. Well, that first piece of business was a year's contract, which was fantastic, and there's always an element of luck in these things, but that underpinned our initial work. To begin with, I was trying to sell more PR services, but it quickly became apparent to me that there were a lot of PR companies out there who could do things more slickly and cheaper than we could, to be honest. So I started thinking about what services could we develop around communications generally. I had just been asked to be a BBC expert woman, and that created a lot of interest out there, and it started us focusing much more around supporting female Emirati leaders and expats, and actually men too, not just women, but around personal branding, thought leadership, and having an impact in meetings and presentations. Well, it's always easy to overemphasize the challenges. To be honest, I think you just get on and do it. It isn't that cheap. You know, if you're going to do things properly, you have to get a license. And it was quite expensive. We were lucky because we had that first contract, so we were covering our costs always, all the way through. I think that there's a big issue around leaving your office empty. Directors tend to produce a lot of energy and direction for everybody. So you need to think about the team that you leave behind and how you support them. Skype is great because you can dial in and catch up with people. So you need to spend time with your team at home. And the time difference and the difference in the working week is also quite a challenge. They work on Sundays, which in a way is great because it means that I could give up my weekends so that I was working in the UAE. But it does mean that you can be working non-stop for weeks on end, that you don't really get a weekend. And of course the time difference, it can be 3 or 4 hours depending on the time of year. But to be honest, anybody who's working internationally anyway knows all of this, and that's what you just have to do. You just need to have lots of energy and get on with it. Again, people ask us, you know, what tips would you have when you're exporting? And I still don't think of it really as exporting. It's just working overseas. What would my tips be? Would be do make sure that you think local, so that initially I used to talk about, well, even when I'd got the license and we'd got sort of office operation out there, I would talk about returning to the UK, and that sounds like you're not committed to the country and that you're not serious about working there. Everybody travels these days, and you need to rethink the language of what you're saying, so that I'm travelling to the UK but not returning, if that makes sense. And then do make sure you have a local phone and use that to make calls, and think about this whole presence of how you work with your UK team. We've had a lot of fun there. We've really developed services for the UK, new ideas as a process out of the whole process of working in the UAE. Oh, there's never any point in what you'd have done differently. I don't reflect too much on that. There's things you can learn, of course, but I think you just got to get on and do it, and respect the local people in the country that you're working in above all else. And that's been our greatest benefit. I'm not sure everybody always does that, but we've had a lot of really fantastic new business and friends in the UAE.